Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much to the Indonesian Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology for inviting DOAJ to this event. I'm replacing Joanna Ball, who is unfortunately unavailable to do the presentation today. I'm based in Singapore and I'm a managing editor with DOAJ since 2016, and I oversee the assessment of journals from Indonesia, India, and the neighboring regions for inclusion in DOAJ. I also manage a local team of volunteer editors for editorial work, and I engage with them to develop an understanding of regional publishing practices. Next slide, please. So my presentation today will include an introduction to the directory of open access journals, a brief information about why you should index your journal in DOAJ, followed by the basic criteria for inclusion and the application and the review process. Next slide. So I will start with the introduction to DOAJ. Next slide, please. So DOAJ is an independent, not-for-profit service supported by donation. The donations are from libraries, library consortia, research academies, and publishers. Our mission is to raise the profile, visibility, and impact of all quality open access journals. And we are trusted across the scholarly community, and our standards are the unofficial gold standard for open access journal publishing. We also are a unique and diverse index of open access journals. We index all journals across all disciplines and across all languages, and not just English. Our services are completely free, and in addition to services, the metadata is also provided completely free for anyone who wishes to download and reuse it. Next slide. We were founded about 20 years ago in Sweden. Today, we are a global team of 20 staff. And as of last year, we handled about 10,000 applications, which is close to about 700 or 800 applications every month. We would not have been able to achieve this without our support from our volunteer editors. We have about 100 volunteer editors working with us today. They have various subject and language skills. We also extend our reach through our network of ambassadors who promote open access and best practices in their regions. We have 25 ambassadors working with us now. Next slide. To give you an idea of our worldwide coverage, we have about 18,400 journals indexed in DOAJ with 8 million article records. And we have, these journals are from 130 different countries and 80 languages. Next slide. I think there is a slight echo. If someone can try to get rid of that. What you see on the screen is a geographic spread of journals in DOAJ, and the largest concentrations of journals are from the UK, the US, Indonesia, and Brazil. Next slide. Why should you index your journal in DOAJ? What are the benefits of doing so? Next slide, please. DOAJ is recognized as one of the key indexing services for open access journals. It is the most important community-driven open access service in the world and has a reputation for advocating best practices and standards in open access. By indexing your journal in DOAJ, its reputation and prominence will increase and attract more authors and readers from across the world. Open access publication funders often require that authors who want funding must publish in journals that are included in DOAJ. Indexing in DOAJ makes your journals compliant with many initiatives and programs around the world. For example, PLANES in Europe. DOAJ metadata is free for anyone to collect and use, which means that it is easily incorporated into search engines and library discovery services. It can also be then propagated across the internet. For journals that provide us with the article metadata, this means that it will be supplied to all major aggregators, research organizations, university library portals, and so on. Indexing your journal in DOAJ is likely to increase your traffic to your website and give greater exposure to your published content. So those are the basic benefits of indexing your journal in DOAJ. Next slide. I shall continue my presentation with the basic criteria required for journals for inclusion. Yeah, next slide. So the first thing is the openness of all online journal content must be free and open access. So what do we mean by this is that the access should be immediate. There should be no delay and no embargo applied to the published content. Users should not have any requirement to register themselves in order to read the articles. These are the two requirements in addition to the access being open and available. A paid for print version is allowed. It is okay to charge for print versions. And journals must display an open access statement that meets DOAJ's definition of open access. And what that is, we shall see in the next slide. Next slide. DOAJ accepts only fully open access journals, and open access is the condition where the copyright holder of a scholarly work grants usage rights to others using an open license, for example, the Creative Commons or an equivalent, and it allows users to reuse the work within the terms of the license or for any other lawful purpose. Yeah, next slide. The basic criteria before application. So before you submit an application to be included in DOAJ, it is important that these criteria are fulfilled. Every journal must have a single registered and confirmed ISSN with the ISSN portal. This ISSN must be displayed on the website, and the journal title that is in the ISSN portal should be the same as the one that you've put in the application form and on the website. Apart from that, journals should be actively publishing the scholarly research. There should be a minimum of at least 5 scholarly articles published every year. For new journals that have launched recently, they must show a publishing history of more than 1 year, or they must have published at least 10 articles. Yeah, next slide. But in addition to that, hybrid journals are not accepted into DOAJ. Hybrid journals are those where some of the articles are open and some of them are closed. These journals are not accepted into DOAJ. Full text must be available individually for each article, which means that there should be a separate URL for every article, and they should be accessible online. Journal applications are rejected if the content is only available as an issue PDF. So if all the articles are combined and put together as a PDF, as an issue PDF, then this is not acceptable. Endogeny should be minimized. What we mean by endogeny is the members of the editorial board and reviewers authoring or co-authoring articles in the same journal. This should be minimized to the extent that it should not exceed 20% of the research content in the latest 2 issues. So if you have 10 articles published in the last 2 issues, the number of articles should be at the max 2 articles and not exceed more than that. Yeah, next slide. The criteria for journal websites. Every journal must have a dedicated homepage. We accept journals whose website information on the website is in languages apart from English as well. So if the site is available in multiple languages, then the information provided must be the same in all languages. So what this means is you cannot have part of the information in a language and the rest of the website in a different language. So if both the languages need to be present, then all the information should be in both the languages. There should be no misleading metrics or any other non-standard services displayed on the website. And the journal must minimize intrusive advertising. There should be no pop-up advertisements, especially when you click on the HTML article or on the PDF article. There should be no pop-up advertisements, and these kind of intrusive advertising must be avoided. Yeah. Information must be easily available and preferably from the main menu of the website. Information such as the aim and scope of the journal, the open access policy, instructions for authors, publisher contact details. The publisher contact details should include the name and the address. And if the website of the publisher is available, that should be provided as well. Editorial board along with their affiliations for all the members, and author charges. Author charges include all kinds of charges. It could be submission charges, charges during the processing of the article, or charges for translation. Any kind of charges must be clearly mentioned on the journal website. And if there are no charges, this should be mentioned as well on the website, that there are no author charges for the author to publish in this journal. Yeah, next slide. So as the editorial process, every journal must apply a robust and a rigorous review process, and a description of the review process should be available on the journal website. The reviewers must not be linked to the editorial board and publisher. This is to ensure that an independent review is conducted. So if the editorial board members are from the same institution as a publisher or has a link to the publisher, this should be minimized, but we are still accepting journals with that condition. But the review itself should be independent, so reviewers must not be linked to the editorial board or the publisher. And peer review must be done by at least 2 independent reviewers. So it is important that journals mention their entire review process, the kind of review that is conducted, how many reviewers are reviewing each manuscript. All the information should be provided on the journal website. Plagiarism checking is recommended, but is not a required condition for inclusion in DOAJ. If along with your plagiarism policy, it is important that you also state the name of the service or the tool that you are using to check for plagiarism. Just mentioning the plagiarism policy is not enough. It is important to mention the service and the tool used as well. Next slide. So there are 7 common types of peer review. The most common ones are the first 3, the single blind, double blind, and the open peer review. The single blind peer review is where the authors do not know who the reviewers are. In the double blind peer review, both of them don't know who is the reviewer and who's the author. And you also have the open peer review system, where the authors and the peer reviewers are known to each other as well. So there are many different types of peer review. It is important that you mention what kind of peer review is being used for your journal. And yeah, so this is just an example of the types of peer review. Yeah, next slide. Coming to the licensing. The licensing policy must be again mentioned clearly on the journal website and preferably linked to the main menu of your journal. Licensing allows readers to know how they can reuse your content. They also inform readers of any reuse that is not allowed. For example, if the content is not allowed to be reused for commercial purposes, then you apply a non-commercial license. This allows users to know that this particular scholarly work or this content is not allowed to be reused for commercial purposes. So this protects the author and the journal against unauthorized use. DOJ recommends the use of Creative Commons license or an equivalent. We'll see further what are the Creative Commons licenses that you can use. Next slide. So A license is a license allows the copyright holder of the work to let users know about how they can reuse the work. CC-BY, the very first one, is one of the most liberal ones. Or anybody wanting to reuse the work only needs to provide attribution to the work. The most restrictive ones is the last one, is the CC-BY NC-ND, which does not allow reuse for commercial purposes. And users are only allowed to share the work, but they cannot change the work in any way. So that is CC-BY NC-ND. Yeah, sorry, the next slide. The next one. Yeah, the next one, please. Oh, sorry, this is the copyright. Yeah. So the copyright policy, again, the copyright of a published work can be held, there are only two things that can happen. Either the copyright is retained by the author or the author transfers the copyright to the publisher. So the best practice that we mentioned is in open access is that authors continue to retain their copyright once it is accepted for publication. But DOAJ does accept journals where the copyright is transferred, and this policy must be stated on the journal website. We recommend that we provide a link to the author agreement or the copyright transfer agreement. This allows us to verify whether the agreement is in line with the copyright policy of the journal. Yeah. So that is as far as the basic criteria for inclusion in DOAJ. The next part is the application itself. How do you apply to be included, and what is the process of evaluation that we conduct once we receive the application? Yeah. So how do you apply? DOAJ does not actively reach out to journals. Journals have to apply to us in order to be included in DOAJ. Before you apply to us, please read the guide. The link to the information is on the screen. All the criteria that I just mentioned is available on our website. So this guide will give you more information in case you still need to find out more. Apply using the online application form. Again, the link is on the screen. So the application needs to be filled in online. The next slide. And the application form looks something like this. There are 7 steps to the application form. It starts with the open access compliance, and then you fill in the links to all the other information that is on your journal website. For example, the copyright and licensing, you provide the link to your website that provides information about copyright, or the editorial board, or the business model, which is the author charges and the best practices. So once you've provided all the information in the application form, you review your answers. You can even save it as a draft if you want to come back to it later. And once you're happy with everything, then you submit the application form. Yeah. So best practices, these are recommended, but these are not required for being included in DOAJ. Some of the best practices include the digital preservation, which is trying to preserve your journal content in one of the long-term preservation services. The repository policy, this refers to the self-archiving of the manuscript. Does the journal allow authors to self-archive the journals, the different formats of the manuscript, the author accepted manuscript, the published version, or the preprint version? So this forms your repository policy. Article persistent identifiers, example DOI. Even if the journal does not have a DOI or does not have a persistent identifier, this is okay. I mean, this is not required for inclusion. It is a best practice. ORCID IDs, does the article metadata support ORCID IDs? ORCID IDs are a unique identifier for researchers. And does the journal support the initiative for open citations, I4OC? The link is on my slides. You can always go to the website to read further. But this is about supporting open citations. Does the journal support the references to be open once it is deposited with Crossref? So these are best practices, but again, not required for inclusion in DOAJ. Yeah. So what happens once you've submitted the application form? The first thing that happens is it goes through a triage process. So within 5 working days, we check for all the basic criteria such as ISSN, open access policy, whether the links are all working, and things like that. And if there is any criteria that is not satisfied, then there is a quick rejection that happens, and feedback is sent back to the publisher, allowing them to improve, and they can reapply to us after 6 months. If the application passes the triage, then this application is further reviewed by our associate editors and our editors. They review the application further for the other policies such as copyright or licensing, endogeny criteria, or all the other criteria that I just covered in my presentation earlier. And once that is completed, they provide their observations and a recommendation whether the journal should be accepted or rejected. And the final decision is taken by the managing editor, who decides whether to reject or approve the application form or approve it with a seal if all the best practices are followed. If the application is rejected at this stage, then again the feedback is sent to the publisher or the journal editor, and they may reapply to us after 6 months. So in essence, this is the complete life cycle of the application. Yeah. So I will end this presentation with some DOAJ statistics as of 2021. Last year, we received about 10,000 applications and update requests. The acceptance rate for this was about 35%. And all these applications were reviewed with an average review time of 3 months. And all this work was done by our DOAJ editorial staff and volunteers, which we have about 120 of us right now. Yeah. So there is more information on our website. Please do visit our website. And if you have any further questions, then you can always send your queries to the helpdesk at doaj.org. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.